Welcome to the Selling in the Motor Trade podcast, in association with symcotraining. This is the weekly podcast where we share best practice, tips and ideas on how to sell more cars, improve your service department, and generally put more profit into your dealership or dealer group. I'm your host, Simon Bowkett. Now, some of you probably already know me as Skippy. I would start by saying thank you for taking the time to listen to this podcast. Today, I'm with the Managing Director of Vines Group, Vines BMW. I'm not sure what I should call it. We'll ask Sean in a second. This is Sean Kelly. So Sean, should it be Vines Motor Group, Vines Group? What do you call the group?
Hey, well, hi Skip. Thanks for having me on the show. That's great to be here. Well, we refer to it as Vines Group.
Sean, a lot of the audience of the Selling in the Motor Trade podcast are sales managers, service managers, looking for those quick wins. We have lots of people saying, how do I make an impact quickly? Because they want to move on, they want to progress, they want to be heads of businesses, they want to be regional directors. And I'd just like to ask you, what advice would you give to someone listening to this that wants to make that impact? So they're immediately, is there anything that stands out that you would see and think, I'm quite impressed with what Jenny's doing or what Billy's doing? Anything that stands out there?
I think the number one thing, and this might be a bit old-fashioned actually, it's bloody hard work. That's actually what it's about. And I mean, I still see this in my business today. I mean, you see people who will come in a minute before their shift is due to start, and they'll leg it a minute after their shift is due to start. Now, don't get me wrong, they might be absolutely happy with their job and their work-life balance and all that sort of stuff. That's great for them. If you're one of those people who wants to get on and wants to be successful, you can't do that. You've got to be putting in the graft, actually. And, just to share a horrible bit of personal story. When I was young, my brother and my father both died before I was a teenager. And so what that did for me was it did two things. One is it made me realize that nothing's for forever. So you've got to enjoy every minute that you're around. But what it also meant was that actually, if anyone was going to give me something, it had to be me. So I had to work hard, and I had to, I had my first job when I was 12. And not even a paper round, because I had one of those too, obviously. But that work ethic has sort of stuck by with me, and probably to the detriment of my dear wife and the kids from time to time when they were growing up. But actually, that's paying us back now a bit later in life. So for me, it's work hard, because actually, if you work hard and you're focused on what you want to achieve, anything is possible. Anything is possible. Might be a bit of a northerner's attitude that a pound earned is 10 times sweeter than a pound found. Because I've actually created that. And that would be my advice. Work bloody hard, do your job, make sure that you get noticed for what you're doing by successful results. But ultimately, it's about putting the hours and the effort in.
Just great advice. Today, I'm with the CEO of the Joe Duffy Group, Gavin Hydes. Firstly, I just want to say, Gavin, welcome, and thank you very much for joining us on another episode. How are you, sir?
Thanks, Simon.
This podcast is all about sharing tips and ideas and best practice, and we'd like to ask everyone, do they have that one little nugget, that one little tip or idea that they wish they had right at the beginning of the career?
All right, tips in the career is definitely get used to rejection and keep going back for more. Don't let no be the final word. Keep going back, keep being tenacious, and don't take no for an answer.
It's my great pleasure today to introduce Patrick Tessier. One tip or idea or something you've seen across your life that in the motor trade that you'd say, listen, any sales manager listen to this, any dealer principal, any salesperson, is there any tip or idea that you'd like to leave the audience with?
Yes, because as a salesperson or a manager, or no matter what you do, set your goals every single day for what it is you're out to achieve. And look, I used to, when I was selling cars, I used to try and find a sale a day. Just one every Monday to Friday, just one every day. That's all I had to do, find one. In order to find that five, I had to know that one every day. I had to have 5 or 6 or 7 people on the go every single day. You've got to keep that funnel going.
Mhm.
Don't be a waiter. Don't wait for it to come to you.
Yep.
You know, make goals, be disciplined. That's and make sure if you're a sales manager, you know, be disciplined with your team, but make certain your team's enjoying their work and they're having fun. You know, don't try and be, you know, the mad rugby coach or you know the angry soccer coach. Don't football, I should say. Sorry.
Yes.
Don't be those things. Be a mentor yourself, but make certain you've got your own discipline in order as well. You know, you've got to have discipline. You've got to have a goal. You've got to have an objective, and you've got to have it every day.
I'm so excited today to be with David Martin. Is there one tip, one idea, some best practice that maybe that you've come up with, or you've seen somewhere, done a bit of R&D, that someone can go back and put in place now, today, and help them sell a car, make some money? Is there anything specific that stands out for you?
Well, this will be kind of old hat because I've been using this now for a long time. But back in the early 1990s, and so as soon as somebody hears that, they might say, "Oh, it can't work now." Trust me, it can. In the early 1990s, I heard a guy who was the #1 realtor in the state of California. Now it's a very large state, very prosperous state. And this guy had just sold hundreds of millions of dollars worth of real estate, and he had made himself millions of dollars each year doing it. So I was pretty sure he was good at what he did.
Mhm.
And I heard him use a close on something that we hear all the time. In fact, probably other than maybe price, the #1 objection we hear in the auto industry is, I want to think about it. I want to ponder it. I want to pray over it. I want to whatever.
Mhm.
And you and I have had this discussion before. I remember you said one time that the thing you love is to, I think, basically think in terms of no, Mr. Customer, or you thinking the customer is not really going to go home and think about it. I mean, when little Johnny comes out and says, "Hey, Daddy, can we throw the football?" "No, son, I'm thinking about a car purchase." That's not happening, okay? I heard you say that in Australia one time, and I cracked up. But it's absolutely true. It's not what's happening, but what happens is I want to think about it is usually 90% of the time masking a real objection that for whatever their reason is, they don't want to.
The hardest objection is the one you don't know what it is.
That's
You've got a fighting chance when you know what it is.
That's it. And so I heard this guy use some variation of what I'm about to say to you, but I put it together for the automotive industry, and it has worked brilliantly. Not every time, but brilliantly in some form or fashion. When the customer says, "I want to think about it," the first thing you should always do is start nodding your head. And you should soften the objection by saying, "I can appreciate that," or "I hear where you're coming from," or whatever you want to say, but something to soften it a little bit. But then for you to say, "Before you leave, Skippy, can I ask you a quick favor?" "Sure." On a scale of, I don't know, let's just say from scale of 1 to 10, with 10 meaning you were about to drive this vehicle home today, and 1 meaning you wouldn't take it even if it were free. Where do you stand right now? Now, the average customer is going to say something like, "Well, I don't know, I'm a 7 or 8, or they might say, "I'm an 8 or 9. But here's the kicker. Then you look at them with a little smile and you say, "Great. What would it take to get you to a 10? And you'll be flabbergasted how many people will go, "Well, to tell you the truth, I'm just not comfortable with the price. To tell you the truth, you're not giving me enough for my trade. To tell you the truth, I like the car, but I don't think my wife is, so I'm going to run it past her first. To tell you the truth, I'm waiting on a settlement on a lawsuit." To tell you that it's amazing how many people have an objection they don't want, for whatever the reason, embarrassment or whatever. They don't want to tell you what it is. And by saying, "Great, what would it take to get you to a 10? And if you think about it, Skippy, you and I both know this, it's exactly like saying, "How do I sell you?"
Yep.
But if you ever said, "Hey, how do I sell you?" They go, "You can't. I just told you I'm going home to think about it." But somehow by changing the conversation and coming at it from a different way, a surprising number of people will tell you exactly what the objection is. And once you uncover it, as you just said, at least you got a shot at it.
Yeah. Well, listen, I've been using that not just training salespeople, but in my own business. It
All
just
right.
works so well. So thank you very much. I learned that earlier from you, and it's definitely made me a lot of money. Now, I love psychology as to why people buy things, why salespeople do things when asked them to do it, and sometimes they don't. I love to know the psychology about what makes people tick. I suppose I'm a bit of a people watcher, and maybe you are as well. But today I've got Dr. Tharika Gunaratha. Now, I don't know if I'm pronouncing your surname right there, Doctor, but actually I'm so excited to get the real ideas as to why people do what they do or why they don't do it. So Dr. Tharika, did I pronounce your surname right? Tharika, is that right?
So Tarika, that's my first name, and that was pretty much right. Gunaratna is my surname, and to be honest, people within my family forget, so we've left that out. So it's Dr. T for short. The crisis, crash, and comeback is my simplified model for psychological volatility. Whenever, like, if you think about it, Simon, isn't it true that we're all either in a crisis, we've just come from one, or we're heading into one, right? There are all these like spikes along the road. It's maybe a complaint, it's a deadline, it's, oh, I need to make up the numbers or whatever, something at home. There are fires to fight everywhere we go in life. And the thing is that there's a real interesting pattern in the shift of our mind. When we're in crisis mode, we're hyper-focused, we're a bit more trusting with our teammates, there's more camaraderie, we're in the trenches together, as it were. There are interesting signs when we are in that post-sprint phase fatigue, that crash, and with that, scarily so for some people, energy goes down and a sense of purposelessness can kick in, and it's that kind of like, why are we even doing this? Initiative goes down. You tell me what to do, I don't know what to do, and so there's that post-sprint fatigue phase. But the great news is that you can come back with the right psychological strategies and the levers to pull. You can jumpstart the human mind or the team back into that, let's go again, we're strong, we can do this. Leadership, you're right, and leadership teams are finding time punctuation quite helpful. I'll just maybe let the listeners in on this. This is one of my strategies for triggering a comeback.
Okay.
Time punctuate. What's the most commonly searched Google term on the 1st of January? What are people Googling about on New Year's Day?
New Year's resolutions. It has to be.
It's often about diet, right? It's about diet, especially. It's what's the new diet? How do I lose weight? And the question is, why does the human mind do that on the 1st of January and not the 13th of May? And that is because when the human mind... Why? It's because when the human mind perceives the beginning of a new period of time, it perceives what we call a fresh psychological ledger. And with that, we're able to separate our mistakes of the past and go, that was then, this is now.
Okay.
And by simply being able to go, that was then, this is now, the brain is now able to reach for a higher level of motivation it wouldn't ordinarily reach for. So you go 1 week before the 1st of January and I'm eating mince pies and drinking brandy, all right? The 1st of January, I'm eating lettuce now, right? It's like, why? Because the human mind perceives a line in the sand in time. So I've been saying to leaders and managers, hey, why don't you use time punctuation with your team? Wherever you can time punctuate, this might just help jumpstart human motivation amongst your girls and guys. So it might be like, guys, that was February. This is March. Ask the question, what's our fresh focus? Ask your team this important question, what's your fresh focus? Guys, that was Q3. This is Q4. What's your fresh focus? Guys, that's when the kids were on holiday. Now the kids are not on holiday. What's your fresh focus? By helping your team see time. Guys, that was last week. This is this week. What's your fresh focus? By using that technique, Simon, leaders and managers are finding that they can unstick their teams a bit more. And it's one way to come out of crash and then to come back out of many of these teams.
I love that. I have to expand on it. I met a man in Australia. He actually run his departments halfway through the month. Now, what he said is, I think it's similar to what you're saying. He said towards the end of the month, there's a natural push because we're trying to get cars delivered. There's natural, that's where we want to get to because that's where we get paid. He said, so why don't we actually run our new cars to the end of the month? Because that's when our manufacturer wants us to get to that target. But why don't we run our used cars to the 15th to the 16th of the month? So then we get 2 natural pushes into the month. So salespeople want to get all the cars out on used cars by the 15th because it's the end of the month on the 16th, okay? Or the new month on the 16th. And I suppose that's exactly what you're saying with time punctuality, okay?
Yeah. Yeah, exact time punctuation. By the way, that example that you've just brought up there, Simon, is a really, really great example of emotional intelligence in action. Because what we're doing there is we're looking at human behavior, comparing it against the timeline, because we're not machines, right? We're human beings. So we show an irrational or behavioral pattern rather than a logistical or logical one. And I just think that's a great example.
That just leaves me to say that all details of this episode and other episodes on the selling in the motor trade can be found on our website, symcotraining.co.uk. Go there to get a copy of our book, Words That Sell Cars. Go there to sign up to a free trial of our Sales Fitness online sales training program. Easiest way to get hold of me is Simon Bowkett through LinkedIn. Thank you.